Welcome, everybody, to another great episode of the Alford Sports Talk Show. I'm Alan, and today we have an outstanding guest for you. We have somewhat of a baseball historian, Ted Knorr, joining us. He's going to tell us a lot about some great baseball players and a lot more here on the Alford Sports Talk Show. So how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's great to hear. And in fact, we'll start right there. One of the great players that you have a lot of affiliation with is Herbert Allen, Rap Dixon, not to be confused with Herbert Dixon, who plays golf, but Rap Dixon. That's right. Please tell us about him.
Well, here's one thing about Negro League baseball research. It's always changing. And you did your homework. Herbert Allen Dixon, which was correct till about 5 years ago. Herbert Alfonso Dixon is what we now find, and I believe to be his real name. This shoulder here, you see a beautiful rendition of him. It's by an artist in Minnesota named Phil Dewey. And that picture was given to me by a friend. I don't know what he paid for it, but he thought it should stay in Harrisburg. One day I was told by a museum curator to stop by and pick up my picture. But Rap Dixon is the outfielder of the Negro Leagues from 1924 to 1937. I think he's the greatest outfielder of any league not yet inducted. And his statistics, the opinions of those that are in the Hall, and his legends are what makes his case.
And why do you think he's not in the Hall of Fame?
Well, that's a good question. And there's two good answers. The first one, he dies way too young. Cool Papa Bell, who Rap has better career stats than, but a much shorter career length than. And I'm not arguing Bell and Dixon. Bell belongs right where he is, the second Negro League outfielder put into the Hall. But Rap's career stats are just as good, but he dies at the age of 41, meaning when Cool was around to embellish, the Negro Leagues, and this is a debatable year, but let's just say the last year without any African Americans or players of color in the majors is 1946. It's another 25 years till the Hall inducts any. And Rap Dixon was dead for all 25 of those years. Cool Papa Bell is alive. So that's one very good reason. The second is very much related. Cool Papa Bell's champion, his Boswell, was Satchel Paige. And Satchel Paige was also alive until he became the first Negro Leaguer inducted in 1971. And Satchel Paige could tell some stories about Cool Papa Bell. Bell hitting a line drive right between his legs. And by the time Bell was hit by the ball as he was sliding in the second. These are the kind of stories that is all we had in Negro League research until recently. And the other one, the most famous one, they were roommates. Page is in bed, Bell's going to be in the other bed. He flips the light switch off, and he's under the covers before the light gets dark. So those kind of stories, coupled with great stats, is what got Cool in. Rap, his champion, was, in my opinion, an even better player than Page. And there only are one or two that you can make that argument about. And that would be Oscar Charleston, the great center fielder. But Charlie died in 1954. So neither Dixon nor his champion, Charleston, were alive within a decade even of the Hall opening its doors. So that's why I think he's not in, because his stats now, there is nobody that batted as often as Rap, which isn't much. Negro League data is not as deep, but it's over 2,500 plate appearances, and there's no Negro Leaguer or no traditional major leaguer that has a higher OPS than Rap that batted that many times.
Yes, it's amazing that you're bringing him back to life and letting us know this. And you have an affiliation somewhat of him and his background. Tell us that.
Well, yeah, I've been bringing him back. 1988, I took a job in Harrisburg. And of course, I was already a SABR member for a decade. And, my job was actually in the same building as the state library. So you give me, back in the day, some microfiche to look at. I'm going to look at it. And it turned out that Rap Dixon and the Harrisburg Giants played Sunday home games in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The state capital was Harrisburg, where I had moved to in '88. Well, I went to Lancaster Catholic High School, which is built on the site of an old minor league baseball park where the Harrisburg Giants, Rap's team in the 20s, played their Sunday home games. So now I find out that Rap Dixon played baseball along with Babe Ruth and Josh Gibson, Oscar Charleston, on the same field where I played a couple games of football, excuse me. And so that connected me with Rap, and it's 37 years I've been pushing him. What's up next?
Yes. In fact, let us know about that jersey you got.
Okay, this jersey is a vintage 1997. The Harrisburg Giants, that was their first Negro League commemorative year. And Ebbetsfield Flannels made these jerseys for the team. They wore them to play that day. And much to the chagrin of the players, they wore them for several years. It's very hot when you're out, playing an athletic contest. But this is a Harrisburg Giant jersey. It is now almost 30 years old. It wasn't game worn, but it's been worn by me ever since.
Yes, and you mentioned you're a SABR member. For those who don't know, Society for American Baseball Research. Tell us about your connection with SABR.
Well, I don't know how many members there's been in SABR, but right now there's around 7,000 or so. And there's always been 4,000 or 5,000 since I've been in. And I was in year 9 of its existence. It was founded in 1971. I don't think, there's a big 0 to 10, 0 being pretentious and 10 being misunderstood or underrated. SABR is closer to the underrated side than the pretentious. We have our pretentious people, but most of the guys and gals in SABR, really know baseball. And the organization was founded in Cooperstown in 1971. And the founder and I think there's only one living guy that was at that meeting in August of '71. Although I got to tell you a quick story about him. In 2011, I was on a cruise with my future wife, and I gave a lecture on rap. They were happy to have anyone fill their ballroom. I didn't exactly fill it, but offer some entertainment for the folks. In my audience, I'm not making this up, Alan, was that one guy. In other words, there was a guy in my audience that was there in August of 1971 when SABR was founded. Anyway, I'm beating that to death.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, that's the thing, is that research that you've done is amazing. How great were the players in the Negro Leagues?
Oh, well, let me tell you what the Hall of Fame teaches, and then I'll tell you how great they are. And God bless Major League Baseball. On August 16th of 2020, they declared the Negro Leagues, a subset, certain leagues in certain periods, as major. And of course, that was met with mixed reviews because who gives them the right? There's that opinion, and I understand that. But it was the greatest thing. And I talked to a few guys, Phil Dixon in particular, right away, and I was thrilled. Phil, a little less so. Being African-American, this is something that he's known since he was born. And now, Major League Baseball, after not opening the doors for 75 years, they have the gall to deem that they have the ability to call them major. But that faded sort of fast, because the truth of the matter is now players, only 4 were still living and only 2 are still living now from the era that they named. But there are probably 40 to 50 that played since 1948 that are now being told that they were major leaguers. They knew it all along, but it's a great thing. It's time for the Baseball Hall of Fame to do their thing. I digressed, but there are 137 players in the Hall from the traditional majors who debuted before Jackie crossed the line. There are only 28 Negro League players. There's 37 total, but only 28 players. That's almost a 5-to-1 ratio. Despite, and here to answer your question, every summary I've ever seen, and I've seen 5 or 6 by guys like John Holloway or Scott Simkus or Todd Peterson. And they list games played between, and this is an important title here, so-called Negro League teams against so-called Major League teams. Oh, Ken Burns is the most elite of these people. Every one show the Negro Leagues won more than half their games. Ken Burns says it was 70%, although when I asked Ken, because I was all excited, I asked him, I said, you have box scores, right? His answer was so classic and honest. He said, box scores? This is oral history. So the 70% is kind of, braggadocio of players. I'm going to talk about my wins, but every single 6 or 7 that I have show more than half. And how can a league win more than half and only have 1/6 as many great players? It doesn't make sense. And the Hall of Fame needs to get their act together. And let me just make one more point here. We had our meeting last year, Sabres Negro League Committee in Cooperstown. It was great. And as founder of that meeting, the Sabres Negro League Research Conference, I was able to welcome folks in the plaque gallery of the Hall, including Josh Rawitch, the president of the Hall. And the last thing I said before turning the mic over, I looked around this room filled with Hall of Fame plaques, and I paraphrased Jackie Robinson's last public statement. And you may recall he was talking about the third baseline, the coach's box, where a manager back in the day would be found. And Jackie said, I look forward to the day when I can look down at that third baseline and see a manager that looks like me. At that time, 1972 is when he died, there were no black managers. So I looked around the room and I said, before I introduce President Rawitch, I just want to comment that I look forward to the day when I can look around this room and see more Negro League players. Josh took the mic, had no comment, and of course I can understand that. But anyway, that's a major theme. The Hall of Fame needs to increase. I would say probably doubling, a little more than doubling the amount of players.
So they need to double the amount of Hall of Fame players from the Negro Leagues, and they need to get Rap Dixon in there.
Well, yes, although if they double the amount of players in the Negro Leagues, they really can't miss Rap. I mean, he's got statistics, and let me just tell you about the opinions that I like to cite. I have a couple dozen, but the first 3 outfielders put into the Hall for Negro League play, Monty Irvin was the first, and the first 2 were put in because they were alive. Oscar Charleston was third, and everybody knows that Charlie was the best. But Monty Irvin ranks 8 outfielders in his biography, and he puts Rap 5th best outfielder of Negro League all time. And he does have 1 outfielder ahead of him that's not in the Hall. So he says Rap is the 2nd most deserving outfielder. That outfielder he has ahead of Rap is Wild Bill Wright, and he belongs in the Hall, no doubt. But Cool Papa Bell, in another little book, I think it's called The Greatest Team, in which he names his all-time team now. And he puts Charleston at first, because when Bell played with Charleston was in his 30s and no longer a center fielder. But that enables him to name 3 outfielders. And he names Turkey Stearns, who went in the Hall a few years after Bell made that selection, Monty Irvin, who was in the Hall at the time, and Rap Dixon. So Cool Papa Bell, the 2nd Negro League outfielder, feels Rap belongs. And the best is the 3rd guy in, Oscar Charleston, who managed Rap, who brought Rap to different teams throughout his career, who actually offered Philadelphia Stars Cool Papa Bell even up for Rap Dixon in 1934. His all-time outfield includes Cristobal Toriente and Martin Diego, 2 Afro-Cubans, meaning, because his 3rd outfielder is Rap Dixon. If I may interpret, Charlie, in his opinion, Rap Dixon is the greatest African-American outfielder he ever saw. So I love what you said. If the Hall would double the amount of Negro leaguers, there's no way they could miss putting Rap Dixon in the Hall.
As you heard it here first on the Allen Alford Sports Talk Show. Got a double amount of Negro leaguers in the Hall of Fame, and they must got to get Rap Dixon as one of them because he deserves to be there. So they're not going to miss him.
That's right.
I appreciate you, Ted Knorr. Thank you for your insight. Thank you so much for joining us on the Allen Alford Sports Talk Show. We're going to do our best to make sure Rap Dixon and those other players get in.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. See you next time.